Hey guys, thanks for hopping on. I'm gonna give it a minute and then we will go ahead and get started. Good to see everybody. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna put my phone on airplane mode. So hey, thank you so much for joining me today, you guys. I appreciate it. I know it's been a week or so since we've hopped on here, and so with the holidays coming up, we'll have a couple of weeks off as well. Um, but just to kind of give you some context on the content today, so I wanted to do some training on goal setting, and um, in years past what I normally do is do a um, day long worth of goal setting and business development and all that. And it really turns out to be a really long day. And I want to make sure that everyone stays engaged. And so I've changed the approach in the past couple of years, where about this time of year, I'll do a session on goal setting, which is, of course, what we're going to go through today, which is really the meat of, those past few years in terms of, what I do at the end of the year to kind of set us up for next year. So, but as my email said today, I really am going to focus less on the goals themselves because I feel that those are pretty individual to everyone because we're all at different points in our real estate career. And I'm going to focus more on mindset and how to really realize those goals whenever you get a chance to do the goals. Okay. So before, let me just share my screen here. Before I get started, I wanted to just reiterate what I had sent out in an email yesterday about two things that seem to always come up during my training at Champions and just in general. And the first one was I was in my training last week and the week before on getting all certified to teach Legal 1 and 2 for you guys next year. And I got clarification directly from the Trek instructors on this new kind of 2-day response rule. And they were the first ones to admit, look, this rule shouldn't even have to exist. Realtors should be responsive to people that are interested in their listings and so on and so forth. But we get a lot of complaints, Trek does, from agents that just are generally not responsive. And so what they clarified was that if anyone reaches out to you and expresses interest in either a buyer representation situation, or if you have a listing, if they inquire about a listing, um, if it's another agent that has sent over an offer, which is kind of, in my opinion, the most common scenario where there's this lack of responsiveness. It's pretty sad, but you think if the realtor wants to list a home, then he or she would be available to take questions and accept offers, right? But apparently that's not happening on a regular basis. And so the rule says that um, regardless of the day of week, regardless of whether or not you're out of town, out of the country, um, or I mean, sick in the hospital, I get it, extenuating circumstances, but the rule is meant to kind of stave off this general just dismissiveness of someone inquiring about something to do with real estate. Okay. And so you got 2 calendar days to respond. So let me clarify calendar days. I shouldn't have to, but it's every single day of the year, right? So Christmas is fair game, New Year's Eve is fair game, Halloween is fair game, your birthday is fair game. Okay, so it doesn't matter what day of the week it is, you have to respond. So let me define respond. If someone sends you an offer, you have 2 days to just acknowledge that you got it. Okay, response doesn't mean my seller received your offer or we looked at your offer and we're going to counter. It doesn't have to be that detailed. You just have to acknowledge that the person reaching out to you got a response of some sort. Okay, do you ever wonder? So I don't know if y'all send you probably send things to the title company just like I do. And whenever I send over y'all's CDA or commission invoice, I always get a response back that says received. Right. And so it goes for their world too. So it just needs to be communicated that someone reached out, you heard them, and I got it. Right. So that satisfies the requirement. All right. So before I go on to the next one that I emailed out, are there any questions on that? And you'll have to unmute if there are. Okay. So the next one um, does come up a lot in literally the 5 classes that I teach at Champion. So they must think it's important. So I teach the class of agency a lot, and so that's what kind of this next one speaks to. So um, when you have a buyer representation agreement, you've created this agency relationship with the buyer, right? And the same goes for the listing agreement with the seller. However, when your client is either, and think of it as SPCA, right? We all think of that in terms of the Animal Protection Association, right? But it means something different in our world. That means if your client is your spouse, is your parent, is your child, or is you the agent, right? So if you're buying a property and you're representing yourself, you have to disclose this. And you do that in paragraph 8 of the 1 to 4 family residential contract. All right. And so I've taught about 4 classes in a week and a half this past couple of weeks. And it's either about this or about Trek's ability to revoke or suspend our license if we do not do this, right? And there are only a couple of, in my experience, items that Trek thinks are a really, really big deal. One of them is presenting the IABS, and the other one is this one. Okay, so if you represent and as my email said, step parents, step children count. Okay, so if your client is your spouse, parent, child, or you have to disclose that in paragraph 8. And I told you what to write in the email. So if it's not you, you can just put buyer is related to agent, all right, or seller is related to agent. If it is you, then put in paragraph 8 uh, buyer is licensed realtor in Texas, or seller is licensed realtor in Texas, right? As long as it's you. Um, so just be mindful that that's kind of the rule. Okay. So any questions on that?
I have a question.
Yep.
What if it's like an aunt, an uncle, a cousin?
Good question. Good question. So they don't count. So
Okay.
if it's siblings, if it's cousins, if it's aunt, uncles, if it's in-laws. So this is I kind of categorize this as what what you're bound to do and what you should do. So if you want my opinion, if it's blood relative, I'd disclose it. But you don't have to unless it's a spouse, parent, child, agent. Now, I will go one step further. Um, Even if you have an inactive license, of course, how would you be able to do this if you didn't have an active license? But if you had an active license in another state, the theory is that you have a leg up or inside knowledge on the real estate process and all the laws and all the contracts that someone else without a license does not. So even if it's inactive or a license from another state, or it's expired, you still have to disclose this, right? So that would only come up if it were you buying the home. So if you let your license lapse and it's 10 years later, believe it or not, you go to buy a home, you have to disclose that you are a a realtor in Texas. Doesn't matter what the status of your license is. Okay. But siblings, uh, cousins, aunts, uncles technically do not count. Grandmother doesn't count.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are all good questions. It's hard to, in real estate, the the joke is it's all about location, location, location. And once you're a realtor, it's all about disclose, disclose, disclose. Like you cannot over disclose in this business. I know your clients think otherwise, uh but um but you really should disclose um as much as you know. All right. So moving on to goal sound. I'm sorry, let me wrap up one last thing. Even though these are your clients and you need to disclose that, you still need, if they're a buyer's rep agreement, and if you're listing their home, you still need a listing agreement. Okay, so that wasn't required before August of last year, but it is right. So now, so please be sure you have all the appropriate forms filled out. Okay, so 'tis the season for setting your goals for next year. I'll be the first to admit that some years I'm good at it, some years I'm not. If my screen weren't blurred, you could see in back of me, I do have a pretty good sized whiteboard that I put these down on, and that helps me visually kind of keep myself in check. But when I kind of walk down this road, or maybe you've worked in corporate America where you probably did this every year around this time. Um, when someone mentions, oh, it's time to set your goals, like what thoughts or emotions come to mind? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel inadequate? You know? Um, do you feel not prepared at all? Does this terrify you? Do you feel kind of hopeless and paralyzed by this huge task in front of you? Do you not know where to start? Do you get physically sick to your stomach? So I've had people tell me this. Do you have a fear of just not being able to achieve those goals? Do you have a fear of letting someone else or letting yourself down if you don't achieve them or if you don't do them? And do you just kind of suffer from this general sense of procrastination? So here's what my sense is whenever it comes to goal setting in general. I just think that to write a bunch of goals down and never look at them again kind of defeats the purpose. So I do really believe that it starts with how you think about them. So your mindset. And you can think about um, the components of this in the acronym CHEW. So the C stands for you have to be able to emotionally connect with the goal. And you have my permission to not write down a goal if you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. All right, you've got to look at that on a piece of paper and really feel emotionally connected to it. The H is that you have to stay hyper motivated and not just motivated, but inspired and focused. And this is going to peak and valley throughout the year, throughout the month, throughout the day. And so you also have my permission that that is okay, but consistency will kind of win. And then E stands for you have to see the end result before you even start. All right. So what does your goal look like in your mind's eye? And then you have to be able to identify why it matters. So I am not going to go down this road of, you got to define your why. You got to figure out your why. Why am I doing this? And, you all know why you're doing real estate. What I'm trying to get to is why the goal you're going to write even matters. Right? And we're going to go through some examples of that. So I want to propose a book recommendation to you. And I really do swear by this book because what do most people do in December when they talk about goal setting? They think of annual goals only. They're sitting here December, what is it, the 11th? 11th, and your mindset is probably, well, the last 3 weeks don't count. You got the holidays, you got New Year's, people aren't moving for a couple of months. Not only can I physically coast, I can mentally coast as well. And so I'll just write down, yeah, I did 5 closings last year. I want to do 10 this year. And then you don't connect to it, you don't do anything about it, and you never look at it again. And so I think that what helps there is if you break down your goals by quarter. And there is no better profession than ours where this works because no one's moving between January and March. General statement, but statistically speaking, they're not. I mean, if you set a goal to sell 15 homes next year, I can almost guarantee that they're all going to be between April and October. Right. So if you set your goals by quarter and set them accordingly based on the peaks and valleys of real estate, it really does simplify and remove the stress of a typical annual goal. This book helps you do that. All right. So it's called the 12-week year because there's 4 quarters in every uh, year, and there's 12 weeks to those quarters. Right. So highly recommend it. Not a long book, but it will hopefully transform how you look at goal setting. So, um, when it comes to doing this exercise, um, my sense is to keep them very simple. I mean, like painfully simple, one sentence simple, right? The minute you start thinking that you're an English major and writing a, Shakespearean play and it has to be complex, you're not going to emotionally connect to the goal and you're not going to get them done. So, one sentence, in my opinion, is going to be just fine. Um, Keep them SMART goals, right? So what does that stand for? The goal has to be specific. So avoid being too vague. You have to be able to measure it. So there has to be milestones that you're going to reach. And then it has to be achievable for you, right? It has to be achievable for you. Um, it has to be relevant, right? I mean, this is the why, right? Are you just putting this goal down, just put it down, or if you achieve it, is it really going to transform your business? And then T, you got to give yourself a time limit to do it. Now, I'm not saying that if you put down a goal to achieve by the end of Q1, that's March 31, and you don't do it, that you can't roll it over. It just kind of depends on the goal itself. But you can't just say, well, I'll get this done between now and December 31st, right? That kind of defeats the purpose. So the other book I want to recommend, and you might have to move your Zoom panel like me, is a book called The Compound Effect. And it's written by a guy by the name of Darren Hardy. Darren Hardy owns Success Magazine. And if you haven't subscribed to his Darren Dailies, I believe it's over YouTube, but you can just go to Darren Hardy on Google and you'll find him. But he'll send you in an email every morning these little kind of inspirational messages, and they're usually enveloped in a story or an anecdote that are really very relatable. But this particular book, in the spirit of what we're talking about today, goal setting, it is kind of about, don't get tempted to make these big sweeping changes in your business, hoping that you're going to get further faster if the change is bigger. His contention is, and I agree with him, that all of you bring a certain skill set to your business. Even if today is the first day on the job, there is no other personality like you. And that at its foundation is your value proposition. So my point is that whether you believe it or not, there are things in your business right now that are working. And the book kind of exposes, well, if you want to move forward and you want to improve, then avoid making big sweeping changes, but rather make small adjustments based on what's working already and based on what the market dictates. And over time, it's going to lead to those huge changes that you wanted in the first place. And I think one of the first anecdotes he describes is when a plane takes off from New York to Los Angeles, um, it's a good 5 hour flight, right? And the pilot is constantly making adjustments from point A to point B based on traffic patterns and weather systems and all that. And those small tweaks get him to the end goal of Los Angeles versus gets in the plane at 8 a.m. in New York City and he has his flight plan and doesn't matter what's happening, he doesn't deviate from it. And the plane veers off like a millimeter of a mile every 10 minutes, right? And then by the time you get to, LA, you're in San Francisco. So it's all about making those small tweaks along the way. Also an easy read. So as we kind of have some downtime between now and the middle of January, please take me up on this and read these books. Um, some other key points on the goal setting process, date the goal, but marry the process, right? So, your goals can change. Just as if you're not going to be the same realtor a year from now as you are today, your goals probably won't be either. And it might be because either A, they were too easy and you achieved them in January, or B, they were too hard and you're never going to achieve them, or C, circumstances have changed and you've got to adjust, right? But if you have a foundational process in place that addresses all that stuff, you won't get discouraged as easy, right? So you can date the goal, but if you stay committed to the process, it almost doesn't matter what goal it is, you're going to get there, right? Um, And kind of similar to this book, small, mundane, everyday tasks are going to result in big payoffs. So you ever go on social media and you got, people taking pictures of closings with big keys and you got people, the timestamp is 2 o'clock in the morning and it's them with their computer open and the caption is, here I am at 2 a.m. hustling for my clients so let's talk about what they don't post. They're not posting about, the 25 emails they had to send out to people. They're not posting about sitting down behind your desk, completely frozen because they don't know who to call. They're not talking about the drudgery of writing handwritten notes and filling out, then no one wants to see that, right? So, but I'm telling you that those are the things that if you consistently do them, is going to equal a big payoff, right? So, all the stuff behind the scenes that isn't sexy and people don't want to hear about on social media, that's the stuff that's getting the job done. Um, do not be tempted to set some pie in the sky, unrealistic goal because you're not ever going to connect to it emotionally, so you're never going to achieve it. And so you'll see these on Facebook too. And I have a really, really good uh, colleague that I've worked with. Well, I don't work with her anymore, but I used to. And I've known her for about 15 years. And sure enough, every year, and she's a sweetheart. Her husband and her, our real estate team, their kids have joined them now. And, I swear, I think it's after they go attend some $1,200 seminar that tells them, don't be afraid to set a goal that you don't think you can achieve. And, sure enough, every year there's a Facebook post about, I think she calls it, this is my one annual hairy, audacious goal. And it's ridiculous. Like, even for her. And so my point is that if you want permission, I'm giving it to you. Don't, don't do that. You're not going to get there. Even if you've been in this business for 20 years, you have to be grounded. There's a difference between a goal and delusion. Am I right? So be kind to yourself and do this logically. Um, and you know what? Don't make it just about your business life. So if there's ever a profession where we need work-life balance and we need more of a well-rounded goal setting process in all aspects of our life, it's real estate, right? And so the other stuff absolutely has to matter, or real estate won't ever matter. And so, look, I'm also not suggesting that you aim for average or status quo, but I am going to tell you that you need a couple of low bar goals to get you motivated. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, if we're sitting here December 11th, and let's say that you've always wanted to get a certification from NAR to represent veterans, and you've signed up for that class. It's a 2-day class, I want to say, and it happens in March. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion that you're going to go and do that, but I'd make that a goal because there's a slim chance you won't do it. 95% sure you probably will, but I guarantee it's going to feel real good if you put that down as a goal and March comes and goes and you've done it. And so emotionally speaking, you're going to need that because there's going to be other goals where you're going to need to adjust or you're not going to achieve the goals, things of that nature. So, man, give yourself some softballs. So, either unmute or throw in chat some examples of goals. So listen, the most common one in our industry, closings based, right? So I want to close 12 homes this year. Based on our definition of a SMART goal, is it? Is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it achievable? That's subjective, right? You just have to assume it is. Um, is it relevant? And is it time sensitive? So by that definition, is I want to close 12 homes this year. Is that a smart goal? Yes, no. Yes, Lindsay, I agree with you. I think it is. Right now, we don't know if it's achievable, but uh, you know, it's definitely fits the general definition. And the next one might be knowledge based. And I think this is important. And so the goal is I want to get my military designation by June 1, or I want to take a course in commercial leasing by Q3. Are both of those smart goals, do you think? I think so too, Sonia. Yep, I agree. And great goals being thrown out there from Trisha and the Reeses. So um, we have three new agents, Bliss and Rick Reese and Trisha Lenig, all hailing from Grayson County. So if you have any referrals that you want to send their way, so think of Pottsboro, Gordonville, Oklahoma. Reese and Bliss have their license in Oklahoma. So just FYI, everybody's moving north, so yeah, so those are what I would consider smart goals as well. All right, so a goal could be process based. And the first one is I want to add 15 people to my database each month for 6 months. So thumbs up whether that's a smart goal. Yes, I would say so. All right. What about I want to prospect more? Thumbs up, thumbs down. No, Trisha says no. Yep, I agree. Too vague, can't measure it, won't ever happen probably. But man, this is a common one. It could be sales based, right? So in other words, sales skills based. First one is want to become the local expert in my own town. Is that specific enough? Probably not, right? As opposed to prospect each day between 10 to 12 in the areas of expired listings, past clients, and local vendors that I may or may not know. That's pretty specific. I'd say that's a smart goal. And then lastly, conduct 2 open houses each month for the next 12 months. That's pretty specific. Now, you may have noticed that I either verbally phrased, or you can see on the screen, that they started out with the two words, I want to, three words, I want to. That's probably not a good example. It should be, I will get my military designation by June 1. I will close 12 homes this year, right? So they need to be more declarative, I think. But from a smart measurement perspective, I think the ones that we said I think they kind of check that box. Okay. So, um, if you don't have a means to write out your production goals, I have a document for that. So I'll pop it up, but I want you to know where it is. It's under our website, under on-demand training. Kind of sort of in the middle here where it says business planning template. It's going to be an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so that's what I'm about to review. I'm also going to give you, we're not going to review it, but I'm going to give you, in case you don't pick up the book, this quarterly worksheet. And you can kind of go about setting your goals for each of the 4 quarters and assigning a level of importance to it. So the spreadsheet looks like this. And it's pretty interactive, but it's still pretty simple. So any cell that you see like here, 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 that's kind of grayed out, is an input field. And so it goes from left to right, and it starts really, really general. And then as you move from left to right, it gets more and more specific. So let's say that you set a profit goal. So this is profit. This is what you would put in your pocket after expenses. A goal of, let's just say it's $50,000, right? And next, and let's say that you have no earthly idea where you came up with that number, and that's okay. That's the spirit of the exercise. Some people always say, I got to make six figures, got to make six figures. And so, go ahead and put $100,000 in there. You'll see how much you need to sell to get to that. But expense wise, I know there's a placeholder for $12,000 here, but there's an expense tab that helps you figure out what to put in there. And I've put the things that you'll probably spend the most money on throughout the year. So let's say that from a lead generation perspective, you're spending $250 a year. That could be you're buying leads. That could be you're spending money on Starbucks gift cards, whatever it is. $500 on marketing. So that could be yard signs, business cards, flyers, Facebook advertising, things like that. All right. And then you got the brokerage fees. So it's going to kind of sort of be about that amount, depending on which plan you're on, and how much commission share you're doing as well. So you'd kind of have to figure that out. And then you're gonna have to pay to be a member of your local board and MLS dues and all that good stuff. And for everyone, regardless of where you're calling in from, that's more or less 11 to $1,300 every year. I would include your phone. So if you're spending 80, $90 a month, $100 a month on your phone, I would include that. Um, Supplies. So this is just general office supplies. And then I would include your auto insurance and gas, right? Because that's critical to what we do. So on the right-hand side, it kind of gives you a sense of what percentage that represents of the whole. And here it gave me a grand total of $8,400. So I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to put $8,400. And next, you're going to estimate about what the average commission rate is that you're going to achieve. And so if in a combination of listings and buyers, um, you're likely going to either rebate some of your commission or give a seller a break in commission because you're representing them to go buy a home. Whatever that is, go ahead and put that average commissioned earned percent in there. I have 2.8 just to account for the two things I mentioned. And then um, put in the average sales price of a home. Okay. So in my example, I've put in $425,000 and that's all you need to input. And you can kind of see that all the other rows have auto populated, right? So you need to earn a commission of at least 58.4 to account for that $8,400 in commission, 2.8%. Annualized, you're going to need to sell just about under $2.1 million in sales because the average price is 425. And the number that you really should focus in on is in yellow. So I've got to close about 5 transactions, right? So that's just a smidge over one a quarter, right? So these can be adjusted. So let's say I want to make $100,000, and the average price is more like 400,000. I'm going to need to sell 10. Now here's something. If you think that the luxury market isn't something worth tapping into, take a look at this. If the average sales price of a kind of sort of luxury listing is $800,000, I only need to sell 5 of them within the year to get to that same 100,000, right? Versus a home that was half that price, I need to sell double, right? So you kind of get the idea. So here's my suggestion. whenever you arrive at this, and don't rush this, right? I mean, do this at a time where you're not interrupted, where you really have time to soul search and figure out what's reasonable for you. What I always do is I draw a box around it and I print it. And I keep that pasted or taped up in an area where I know I'm going to walk by and see it. Because the first kind of hurdle that you have to overcome when you want to achieve this stuff is what did I say I was going to do again? And so it's right here. Oh yeah, I got to get to $100,000 and I got to sell 10 of these things. And panic starts to set in when it's June, July, August, and you really haven't paid a whole lot of attention to this. You're just kind of letting the process run you versus being intentional and getting after this goal, right? So high level so far. So now you want to go to this business sources tab and figure out, well, out of this, how am I going to get there? How many buyers do I need? How many sellers do I need? So um, let's just go back to 50. Whoops. All right. So I need five. So if you go to the business sources, you have how many listings you're going to do. And then once you get there, it'll auto populate how many buyers you need. So I needed five. And reasonably speaking, because it's still in some pockets, not enough supply to satisfy buyers, I'm going to do two listings. And once I put that in, if I did this, if I just put one, you kind of see how the buyers change. So I'm going to say out of those five that I need, two of them are going to be listings. And I'm going to get those from my database. So I'm going to call people that are going to refer. And expired listings are always a good source for listings. So I'm going to get one there. And that gets me to my two. And then I'm going to come over here and say, well, if I know I need to do five and two of them are listings, three of them are going to have to be buyers. And where am I going to get those from? Well, one I'm going to get from my database for the same reasons. And I know that conducting open houses are also a good way to get buyer leads. So I'm going to do two of those, or I'm going to get two clients from that source. Okay. So that gets you to your five. Three plus two is five. Well, then I have to back into, well, how much work do I need to do to get to these two listings and to these three buyers? Well, I'm glad you asked. I have a tab for that. And before I go into kind of all this, we're going to put in some assumptions based on your skill set and where you are in real estate. And on some of these, you're going to see these split by these little diagonal lines. Some of these fields that doesn't apply, but wherever you see three sets of numbers, the first number means this applies if you're brand new. The middle number applies if you're kind of been at this for a couple of years. And the third number applies if you're advanced, right? You're a seasoned agent. And so what you want to do is start from the bottom and say, okay, how many weeks am I going to devote to prospecting and we're on listings, so getting to these two listings. And when you take away holidays, vacations, maybe you get sick, I just put in a placeholder of 44 weeks out of the 52 because that kind of seemed reasonable, right? Months at it, I put in 11, and that's kind of all you need to do at this point. So then, if I said I'm going to get um, one listing from my database and one from expireds, it then begins to kind of break down, well, how many initial contacts do you need, right? From that, how many appointments from that are you going to set up? How many people are going to show up for that? how many people are you going to convert, and then how many of those are you going to sell? Okay. So these come from these metrics. And I believe I use the middle, like intermediate slash kind of sort of been doing this for a couple of years metrics. And I just turn these into percentages, right? So, and I did the same for expireds. So I'm assuming a certain degree of I can kind of sort of do this. I don't need a whole lot of help. Um, but you can apply whatever metric you want. And so then it says, all right, well, based on that, um, every week, because we're on weeks here, I only need to make basically one unique attempt out of my database a week to get to that number because if they know me, then they're going to talk to me. So that conversion is going to be pretty high. But some of which they just might not be right place, right time. They're not going to set an appointment because they really don't need to talk to you. But this all sweats out to a really low number, right? And if you do it on a monthly basis, it gets even more compelling, right? So on every month, you need to talk to about 2.5 people. About those same amount of people are going to talk to you, but some might not have a need and so on and so forth. And then you get to annual. So if you do that every month and every week, then what you're getting to is about, let's just round up to 28 attempts. About 26 people will talk to you. About two people will set an appointment. You're going to have about two meetings and you're going to take about an average of 1.5 of those, right? And then in today's market, they're probably all going to sell. So, you're going to get there. So the same goes for expireds. Now, if you want to amp it up and do more, go for it. It'll certainly increase your chances. But it's important to remember two things. First of all, these are all unique reaches, right? So it's not the same person, right? So if you do one a week, that's 52 people a year, and you're going to have to continue to follow up with those same people to, get it across the goal line. All right. So the same thing goes for the buyer side. So we said we were going to do, three buyers, and I said one was going to come from our database, two were going to come from open houses. And this is kind of how the math breaks down there. And what should dawn on you is that, in a balanced market, which I think in most pockets of our state we're in, this should be pretty achievable. Now, look, you can't control countries going to war. Fed didn't lower their rate, although they did, but that doesn't have a whole lot of impact on the mortgage industry. Or massive job loss. Like you're not going to be able to control that. So if those things happen on like a macroeconomic level, then you just need to call more people. Like no math algorithm is going to solve all of your problems. But I do want you to understand that, and I mentioned two things. One is you can't control the market. Number two, I hope this resonates with regards to um, how little effort in some of these instances you really have to put in, right? I mean, don't make it overcomplicated. Now, I know some of you are sitting back and saying, "Well, surely it's not that easy." Um, I'll give you a little statistic. 50% aren't even doing this. Like there's a statistic out there in real estate that 50% of all realtors aren't even following up with prospects that are raising their hand and saying, I want to hire you. Can you believe that? Right. So those people are getting frustrated. They're going to somebody else. They're dropping out of the whole game. Um, and so when you marry that with when sales are closed, um, 80% of all hirings are happening on the between the 10th and 15th time you reach out to somebody. So that's why I want to drive the point home that these are unique touches because people are only moving every 10 to 12 years. So you're going to encounter a lot of people that just, it's not the right time. So this hopefully kind of backs that up where you still have to talk to people, but you've got to follow up with them. And what I found is that the people you're speaking with aren't necessarily going to be your direct customers. It might be people they refer to you, right? So this may be an oversimplified version on how to do this, but most people aren't even doing this. And I hope that you can embrace a simplified approach to doing something, i.e., setting goals, um, where most people aren't even doing this much, right? I'm going to send this out, although it's on our website, but I'm going to send this out after the meeting with a link to the recording, of course, along with this one. And take your time and get in a mode where you're mentally not stressed, no interruptions, turn off your phone, and really give this some thought. And I would, if I were you, take multiple passes at this tab because in your gut, you're going to know whether or not you can really get to 5 closings or whatever number you put in there. Now, if this is your first day on the job or you're brand new to real estate, given the market currently, I would shoot for one a quarter. If you've been in this longer than you're brand new, maybe you do 1.5 a quarter. So you're at 6 or 7 by the end of the year. But people struggle with that number. Like they don't know what they should put in here. But I think logically speaking, if you're putting an effort into your business and you're doing this and you're doing this, remember, it's the small, mundane, boring stuff that's going to get the job done. You will get here. You'll do one a quarter, right? But only you can determine that, right? So take a couple of passes at this just to make sure that you're being realistic and go conservative. If I mean put 3 down if you want. And if you get to 4 or 5, great. But here's the key to real estate. Every closing is going to net at least one or more referrals, assuming it was a positive experience. Right. And so that 4 will turn into 8, and that 8 will turn into 12, and the 12 will turn into 24 quickly, because there are plenty of people out there that have a license that have no business having a license. And those people get passed over quick. And, here you come, professional, polished. Yes is the answer. What's the question? I can definitely do this for you. And you're going to get business. And these goals will be second nature because you're like 4, I do 4 this quarter. That'll be you a year from now. I guarantee it. Okay. So, but be realistic, be methodical, be deliberate, and you'll get it done. All right. So, um, any any questions? You'll have to unmute. Or you can throw it in the chat. Yep, so the Excel sheet's online on our website, but it's under on-demand training. About halfway down, it says business planning worksheet. But I'm going to send this out as well. Goals, I approach goals that they're very fluid. They're likely not going to be the same 12 months from now as they are today. But, in my opinion, giving up is not an option. I mean, you've spent money and time and mental energy into doing this. Forward progress, forward progress. And you're running your own race, right? Do not compare yourselves to people on social media. It's a smoke and mirrors anyway, right? You're running your own race and don't compare yourself to other people. Just compare yourselves to your own self and where you were yesterday. All right, so that takes us to about the hour. any input, any feedback, any questions, any concerns before we drop off? Nope. Okay. Well, I'll send this out as a recording and along with those two sheets. And if you want to take the next step to kind of do this and then set up some coaching with me, that would probably be a good idea. I can help you kind of bring this into focus because you'll spend an hour or so on this and your eyes will start to get jumpy, right? You won't know which end is up. So use this as a foundation, um, and and let it go from there. And 1 second. Yep, and Trisha says she is here to host open houses for anybody. So if anybody has a listing that they don't want to do an open house for, or you've had a stale listing, Trisha is your person. Yeah, so love the ambition. Those are great ways to get buyer leads. So awesome. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate your time today, and we'll see you next Thursday. Allegiance Title is hopping on next week. They won't be doing CE, but they will be going through the general title process, closing process, reviewing of the schedules. So if you're like me, I could always use a brush up on that subject. So awesome. We'll see you guys next Thursday, and thanks for hopping
Thank
on.
you,
Y'all
sir.
take care.